Thank you for staying with us. You're still watching the Breakfast Show. Under the auspices of President Al-Sisi, the third scientific conference for environmental sustainable development organized by Al-Azhar University kicked off on Saturday. The conference offered knowledge of climate change and ways of facing it. The three-day conference for environmental and sustainable development was attended by Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Dr. Ahmed Al-Tayyib, Religious Endowments Minister Mukhtar Gum'a, and the Republic's Mufti, Dr. Shawi Alem, as well as top figures. The event prepares for a UN climate conference that will be hosted by Egypt in Sharm el-Sheikh next year. With us now here in the studio is Dr. Mohamed Emmara. He is the Vice Dean of the Faculty of Engineering, Social Services Affairs and Development at Helwan University. Thank you very much, Dr. Emmara, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me with you today on the program.
Thank you, Dr. Emmara. A pleasure to be with us, sir. And now, as an expert in this field, the field of environmental and social services and community service, tell us about this conference, the importance of this conference, the significance of this conference.
Definitely, it's a very important conference in preparation for the Grand Conference of the Environment to be held, I think, in Sharm el-Sheikh. As Vice Dean of Engineering for Community Service and Environmental Development, this is one of the main and major topics that we deal with in our specialization. It's not just, as far as I understood from the title, it's not just for the environment, but it's also for sustainable development. Mm-hmm. They are closely related to each other. Mm-hmm. If, for example, we're talking about trying to preserve the environment and protect it from emissions and fossil fuels and carbons and carbon dioxide and so forth, then we are talking about sustainable energy development, clean and sustainable energy development. This is one of the main focuses of our government during the past few years and in the future. And as you can also see that with the partnership with other countries in these fields, for example, in solar energy projects and also in wind energy generating projects. So they are definitely related to each other, and they are the hot topic right now for energy development, which is, of course, clean and sustainable energy.
Right. Dr. Emmara, among the topics being discussed, as you mentioned, the impact of pollution on the climate change, the negative effect of climate change on health, industry, water, and agriculture, in addition to the role of greenhouse gas emissions in upping pollution rates and global warming. So if you talk to us about the sources of renewable clean energy to protect our environment today, what sources are we looking for? Where are we advanced here in Egypt, and where are we getting there?
Of course, you're absolutely right. There are major concerns about pollution. Like, for example, the problem we had with the ozone layer a few years ago. Emissions from factories, cars, vehicles, and so forth contribute a lot to global warming and to pollution. It cannot go on like this. So governments worldwide, and especially our government, have targeted clean and renewable energy in order to replace the old energy sources, or the traditional energy sources like fossil fuels, for example, in cars and in generation of electricity. So what we're towards environmentally friendly vehicles like electric vehicles, for example, and we have a new factory in Egypt that's sponsored, I think, by the government, and this is going to produce electric cars. This is one huge step. Now, with regards to the other factor, which is electricity, because we need electricity to charge the cars. So what about electricity? Are we just going to depend on the old traditional thermal systems and fossil fuel systems? No. We are now heading towards generating electricity from solar energy, from the sun, from, of course, hydroelectric energy. We've had that for a long time in Egypt, as represented by the Aswan Dam and the Aswan High Dam. We also are targeting generating energy from, in addition, of course, to nuclear energy, which is a very clean source of energy. We now have.
What about solar?
Solar is definitely going to be one of the main sources for electricity in the future, and it's getting less expensive. Of course, today it's much less expensive than it used to be. To develop the large-scale production and so forth. So definitely, sun is main sources of electricity generation in Egypt. We have a very big solar energy plant in Upper Egypt in Aswan, as far as I can remember, and this is going to be one of the biggest in the world and in the region. So we are moving on the right track.
Right. Now, Dr. Emmara, the recycling of solid waste and non-biodegradable materials, how important is it, that process?
It is of utmost importance. Due to the development that we are witnessing right now in Egypt, we have, for example, waste from construction. We have also solid waste from the household. We have definitely some other sources like paper and so on. So all of these are non-biodegradable, and they are very difficult to get rid of as we go. So if we do not find out a way how to recycle, then we're going to end up having huge landfills with material that is going to be a huge problem for the government and the society. Fortunately, in our faculty, we have a school of research in this field. We also have our consultancy office, and we are into some projects with the government and with the governorates in order to provide them with the know-how as to how to recycle. Already, we had some projects and handed them over to the governorates, and I have had the pleasure myself to present a huge project regarding solid waste recycling, and to present it in front of the university board on September 28th, past September 28th. And this one, I would like to, if we can implement it, for example, in one of the major projects that we're having right now, which is the presidential initiative Haya Karima, in order to recycle the solid waste in all governorates, not just in the major cities, but also in the governorates.
Wonderful.
So this is, I think, is going to be a good step forward if we can implement this project.
Sure. Dr. Emmara, what about wastewater treatment and management, and also how important is that?
It is very important, of course. As you know, the sources of fresh water in the whole world are getting fewer and fewer by the day. Why? Because the population worldwide is increasing, and the sources of fresh water are limited. So we should try to make use of every single drop of fluid that we have in order to preserve the freshwater sources. So wastewater treatment is definitely, instead of throwing the water away in landfills or in the sea or in the oceans, we can make use of it. We can recycle it and use it in irrigation. We can even use it if it is properly recycled or highly recycled. We can even use it in some household chores, as is done in some of the countries.
Right. And now, Dr. Emmara, the terminology green construction, we want to know from you, what does it exactly mean, and how is sustainable development linked to green construction?
I'm not an architect, but I am a civil engineer, so I'm going to talk within the general context of the principle itself.
As simple, make it as simple as
in layman's words, as you can say. Well, green architecture is also some sort of buildings that can also be environmentally friendly, preserving, for example, in simple words, energy consumption. We can definitely use that in the new cities because we are building them from nothing, so we have brand new buildings, and we can build them according to the codes of practice of today and of tomorrow also. And this is where sustainable development and construction comes in. Now, if you are building a project right now, let's say we're building a building, a structure, then we are building it according to today's codes of practice and according to the needs and the aspirations of the people today. However, what's going to happen in the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? Are we going to build a new one and demolish this one? Of course not. So we have to leave some leeway for the future generations, for the future engineers, in order that they are able to further develop these structures within the general context of the codes of practice and the aspirations of the people and the society at the time. So it is a continuous project that's going on, and that's constantly being developed and improved according to the aspirations and the codes of practice.
Right. Dr. Emmara, dust and sand cleaning, suppressing strategies in megacities. Also talk to us about this this issue as well.
This is a problem generally in countries with deserts. Also, not just sand, but dust. Dust also comes in, and we can see that, of course, when we have a sandstorm, for example, or a simple some wind, that we have to suppress the amount of sand and dust that are available in order to reduce pollution. There are always techniques for that in construction and in cleaning and so forth. However, it has to be taught to the youngsters from the school time how to deal with such matters, how we can insert the idea of preserving our environment, and how can we deal with it technologically and also academically and scientifically. So this is very important, of course.
What about the recycling of biodegradable home wastes?
This is one of the
pardon me.
No, sure. This is one of the items that are included in the waste recycling projects. We can separate the biodegradable waste and the solid waste that's not biodegradable. This is used in recycling of, for example, steel and glass and paper and so forth. This is one aspect of it. The other aspect, we can produce, of course, from the biodegradable, we can produce fertilizers, for example. We can make use of it using some agents that we add to the mix. We can use that in producing fertilizers, which is, of course, we can use it in other applications.
Yes. Now, we have major projects here in Egypt for water treatment or for sewage treatment. So what about the importance of that nowadays?
We just talked about, which is the wastewater treatment.
Yeah.
Instead of throwing away the sewage into the sea and put the sea, the shoreline and the coastline, we should make use of it, because instead of just making nothing out of it, we can treat it. Of course, it is an expensive, but it's going to get less expensive as we go on.
What about water desalination? How important is
water
that?
desalination is getting important every day, everywhere, not just in Egypt. As I said before, they are closely linked to each other. We have a scarcity in the in finding new sources of fresh water. So we have to make use of every single drop of water that we have. So water desalination projects are important in providing, because we have in Egypt our 2,000 kilometers of coastline. We can provide the freshwater needs for the cities along the coastline through desalination plants. Also, recycling of wastewater and sewage, and of course sewage treatment. We can use that after treatment in irrigation. If we do that, then we are going to preserve our freshwater sources from the Nile for the irrigation and agriculture in the Delta area and along the River Nile Valley, and also in the new reclamation projects in the desert.
Certainly, Dr. Emmara. Now, finally, certainly combating climate change will improve, the health of the people.
Absolutely.
Will improve the quality of water, I guess, the agricultural industry at large. So if we talk about these axes, can you please give us more insight on the importance of combating climate change on these important axes: health, industry, agriculture, and so on?
It's always better to prevent than to treat. So, health-wise, definitely pollution affects health adversely, unfortunately. So, if we treat environmental hazards before taking action against the health of people, then it's definitely much better. Not just health-wise, but also financially, because the cost of treatment is very expensive. So now, speaking about the hazards that we have from the environmental pollution, we should try, as we are doing right now, to prevent and counteract these hazards in order to protect health. The same can be said about agriculture, of course, because also agriculture is affected by environmental pollution. So the quality...
And it also affects the health status entirely.
The quality of food, definitely, will be much better, which is going to be positively reflected on the health of the society. So now again, we are preventing and protecting rather than treating.
That's community service. Dear viewers, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this segment of the Breakfast Show. On behalf of you, we thank very much Dr. Mohamed Emmara, Vice Dean of the Faculty of Engineering for Community Service and Environmental Affairs, Helwan University. Thank you very much, Dr. Emmara.
Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure to have you with us.
For having me with you today. Thank you so much.
Dear viewers, please stay with us. My dear colleague Mahesti Rabia will be back momentarily to proceed with this morning's edition of the Breakfast Show.